Hey, Chicago, what do you say? It's the CHGO Cubs pregame show presented by PointsBet. Use the promo code CHGO when you sign up to get 2 risk-free bets up to $2,000. Luke Stuckmeyer, Ryan Herrera, Cody Delmendo getting you ready for the Cincinnati Reds and the Chicago Cubs.
Cincinnati.
Ryan's back from the clubhouse and from the press box, ready to go for a few road games. You been working out, bro?
I
Looking
have
a little
been working
swole
out.
over there.
I have. I was in Vegas, so I got a nice tan.
That's
and
what
that
it was.
helps,
Yeah,
but,
shows the definition.
Yeah, thank you for noticing.
Yeah, no problem. So, hey, here's first thought on this series. The last series was a bit of a nightmare because you'd been playing some pretty good baseball. And, again, this is a team. The Diamondbacks had lost 6 in a row. That's a team you should have beat. Do not go into this if you're the Chicago Cubs against the Reds and just assume you are going to roll over the worst team in baseball. That would be the biggest mistake they could make, because if you think losing 3 out of 4 to the Diamondbacks with your 4 starters in there is bad, well, that's not as bad as if you would lose some to the Reds. That would be worse than your stretch against the Dodgers and the White Sox. This is a trap series for the Cubs with the Sox sitting on the other end. Do not take the Reds lightly just because they're bad.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it with the Pirates like a few weeks ago, losing 3 or 4 to the Pirates at home, and it was like, Pirates are supposed to be tanking. The Cubs are supposed to be fielding somewhat of a competitive team, and then they dropped that series. So it's like, just in terms of like overall picture, do you not want to sell the trade deadline, even though that's probably what it's looking like? This is like, you have so little margin for error that you can't lose a series to the Reds. It's in Cincinnati, so road series is always tough. Even though the Cubs have played better on the road than at home this season, but you just can't lose. You can't lose a series to the Reds.
Yeah, I mean, let's be real. This weekend sucked, and the only reason that they won yesterday is because Schwisdom decided to show up for a second consecutive game. I had already prepared myself for pain at the end after Keegan Thompson gave up that run in the 7th, because it was just the script was exactly the same from Saturday, which I'm still mad about Saturday's loss. I couldn't even celebrate yesterday's comeback win because I was still mad about Saturday's loss, because if they don't blow that game Saturday, you split that series, and you're like,
split's better.
You're very whatever about that, right? And the Cubs would have came out of that homestand, 4-2, 4-3? Yeah, 4-3, I
don't
think.
math.
Yeah, I don't math much, but I think that would have been 4-3.
4-3, above 500.
And at least that's above 500. So, whatever. So I'm going into tonight's game as I feel like it is a must win. You want to call it a must win in May? I don't know. I know we are at the point where it's like, do the games really matter? Do we just care about development and quote unquote exploring, like Luke says, or we just care about Contreras performing well? That way we can trade him for 1,000 prospects. I don't know. I'm still in the middle where I'm just like, I want to win, and I'm also like, I also would like just something good to happen. You know what I mean? And I just don't know how to feel. This sucks. So, yeah, you get to play the Reds tonight. You get to go up against a pitcher who has an ERA over 8. The Reds stink. They stink. And if they don't win this series, I mean, then I'm waving the white flag. If they don't win the series, I'm waving the white flag for the series or for the season, and I'm just going straight I've been tweeting these 5 takeaways after every game for the last 2-3 weeks, and I'm going to wave the white flag, and that is all I will be caring about is what players are that I care about are doing this or that. Because if we lose a series to the Reds,
right,
there's just no coming back. There's no coming back.
If they lose to the Reds, we're going to have to figure out how to get Cody out of Lake Michigan.
Yeah.
Do we send a life raft? Is it the little dinghy thing? Our buddy Joe Kilgallen, who's been on the podcast, and by the way, we need to get Joe back in here, says, serious question, guys. As fans, we of course want them to win, but since this is a rebuild, does it matter? Just root for individual guys to increase their trade value. I understand that way of thinking. The days of thinking this team was getting back to 500 should be gone from your mind. Probably should be gone from your mind.
You're being my dad
I was going to
here.
ask you guys that tonight on postgame. Do you think it's possible for this team to ever get back to 500 this season. I'm going to throw it out there. The odds of that, I wish PointsBet had that because that's not. I don't think that's happening.
Yeah.
Like they would have to go on a real tear, and I don't see this
24?
lineup ever being consistent enough
Yeah.
to get them to that point. And when you look at the lineup tonight, Ortega, Villar, Suzuki, Happ, Gomes, Schwindel, Rivas, Wisdom, Morel. Here's my biggest question. How are Wisdom and Schwindel supposed to go back-to-back for a third straight game when they're not batting back-to-back?
You got to ask David Ross that question.
I don't understand that one.
No, going back to like the original point, like, do I think they can get back to 500? Like, that's going to be, again, I mentioned it earlier, but just there's or very little margin for error anymore. Because you got past the gauntlet, that 14 game, 17 game, whatever it was. And then the softer part of the schedule, the Cubs take three straight series, and then, obviously you feel good about that. And then they drop 3 straight to the,
Right.
They lose game 3 to the Pirates, lose 3 straight to the Diamondbacks, and now you're kind of back to the drawing board because you're under or 8 games under 500 again. And I mean, looking up, you get this 4 games against the Reds, which, hey, if they get out of Cincinnati with like a 4-game sweep, that's a step in the right direction. But then they got the Sox for 2, the Brewers for 4, and then the Cardinals for 5. Like that's
No. Yeah, Brendan,
tough.
our
It's
buddy
tough.
Brendan Miller's on there, and he's saying, Luke, all they have to do is win 8 straight. I'm aware of that, Brendan, and I think
all
it's
they gotta
highly
do.
unlikely. And, and by the way,
the
Sean wants to know what you're betting, Cody.
The Cubs were favorites all weekend. In every game against the Diamondbacks, they were favorites on PointsBet, and they lost 3 or 4. I'm just bury me 6 feet under into the ground, folks. Like, that's just ridiculous.
Well, they had their 4 best pitchers going.
Right.
And they got to use Keegan Thompson, but they wasted some of their better outings. Like, you can't have your 4 guys finally going and then not support them the way they need to be supported.
Yeah.
The Hendricks thing was the wind was blowing out. I'll just chalk that up
I
to
will say this.
Except the Diamondbacks took more advantage of it than the home team.
100%. Their
The team that
offense took
plays in
advantage of it more.
I will say this, like what Joe's comments said, because this is how this conversation started. Like, what Joe's saying, like, I totally am. I'm with him. Like, that's perfectly fine. I completely understand fans that are in that mode. My thinking, and this might be just like complete me just insanity, like me being me for the last 30 years of my life as a Cubs fan, just like talking myself into thinking like things can happen. And then some people are just, they're just, they're done or they're realistic, whatever. My thinking is like, this is what's frustrating, is what if the Cubs had Miley and Alzolay to start the year? Like, we've seen how good Miley's been since he came back. Pretty good. You look at the potential that Albert Alzolay has, whether that would have been in the bullpen or, as the 4 or 5 starter. We've seen Steele get better. We've seen, Hendricks is still whatever. And Stroman, I know he's had a rough start, but, like, he has pitched good games. Like, you got to think that if they had that rotation healthy at the beginning of the year, maybe things are different. And despite the fact that their offense is as inconsistent as ever, I do feel like if they had the healthy rotation in the beginning of the year, they'd probably have a few more wins, and maybe we could talk ourselves into them getting back to 500 more. And, like, now with the offense as what it is, you're talking about, well, Nico's also out. And it's not even Nico's fault. It's because a stupid umpire decided to run into him. And then, all these other little and it's just so, like, all it comes down to is the Cubs should have spent more on one more bat or one more pitcher, whatever. I don't know what it should have been. All I know is they should have done just a little bit more because they came in this season. We've talked about it many times. They came in this season with if things are going to go right, everything has to go right for them. We say that every game. Everything has to go right for this team to actually win games. That's what it is. That's where I'm at. I am not living and dying with this team every single day.
Yeah, you are.
But shut up. I'm trying to just be real from a mental state of where I am right now. I understand that this team is not good. I understand. That doesn't mean I want to just root for players and then whatever, they trade everyone. I'm just like, I'm trying to figure out what the Cubs are going to do, and I generally don't know what they're going to do. Everyone thinks they're either going to sell everyone or they're going to sell a few or whatever, and they should. They should sell some guys at the deadline at this point. They really should. But should they sell Stroman, Hendricks, Contreras, Ian Happ on top of all those bullpen arms? No, not in my opinion. But, I'm just one person. So I just like, that's where I'm at, is like, I'm just trying to figure out what they should do. Everyone thinks now with how they've been playing, this team's not going to compete until 2025. And I think they won't be competing until 2025 if they do trade all of those guys. So, I mean, but we've seen them trade the 3 guys last year. So I wouldn't put it past them. But, here we are.
Well, and then I know I looked at it and I wrote about it yesterday at like the quarter season. Go to allchgo.com if you haven't. Check that one out. But it's just like, it doesn't feel like it's going to be a complete, like, just trade everyone worth any value like it was last year. Like, they have Seiya Suzuki. They're not going to trade him, obviously. Wilson Contreras, I mean, there's been no indication that they're going to lean towards keeping him around. So that, I mean, that's probably someone that, at least right now, expected to be gone at the trade deadline. But we also came into the season with that expectation, and as Joe said, it doesn't matter if they win because it's a rebuild and you want to see individual performances. And of course, to like David Ross and the coaches and the players, they want to win every single game. But then when you're on the outside looking in, and this is probably how the front office is looking at it. Hey, like we talk about all the time, it's like where do you have what answers do you have to a lot of these questions? Like where are these guys succeeding? Like Keegan Thompson obviously succeeding out of that bullpen role. Now you kind of have an answer like, hey, at minimum, he's a multi-inning weapon out of the bullpen. Will he get a spot in the starting rotation? Injuries happen and stuff like that. We saw he got with 2 starts when Stroman was out, and he had solid games then too. So you're seeing him have success of at least going to be a multi-inning 3-4 guy out of the bullpen, like we saw yesterday with backing up Wade Miley. And then that's kind of just like the overall like theme, I guess, of what the season is like they need to find out what they have for the future. And sure, obviously the Cubs would like to win more games. They would like to do all that and make the playoffs. In a perfect world, that's what they do. It's just not a perfect world, and we've seen it on the field. So I think back to Joe's point is, I think from the outside looking in, what you want to see is just a lot of the players that they want to be special, develop, and contribute and look good, so that when they are ready to compete again, they have those pieces in place. That's what the season has always been. That's what we came in expecting the season to be, and that's just at the moment right now, 8 games under 500. That's what it's looking like.
It's playing out that way. Joe says Stroman could easily be dealt, not out of the realm of possibility. Back to his original point of, should we just be rooting for individual performances? As you said, that's true. That's what we've always said it was about. But I want to make this pretty clear on this podcast. Don't let me or anybody tell you how you want to Cub.
Yeah.
If you want to be, if you want to be Cody and you want to root for a series against the Reds like it's the World Series, go ahead and Cub that way. I don't care. That's okay to Cub that way. If I want to be the guy that just worries about who's developing, let me Cub that way. That's okay too. It's just baseball. It's not life or death. So if you want to put your whole heart and soul in every game and get excited, that's okay. Were we pumped up when Morel hit the home run?
Yeah.
Yes, it probably meant absolutely nothing. But if that's the way you want to Cub, go ahead and do it, because that's what baseball is about. So don't let our podcast or anybody outside or any haters tell you how you want to watch baseball. If that's how you want to watch it, do it. You can also do both. Like Joe's saying, should we stop and just worry about the developing? You can still root for the Cubs to beat the Reds and be rooting for development of the team, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be one or the other. This whole society's become one or the other. It's okay to root for them to beat the Reds in a series that probably in the grand scheme of things means nothing. But you can also be rooting for individual guys to develop throughout the season. You can do both at the same time is my point.
Yeah.
And all 3 options are okay.
Yeah.
It's just baseball.
Right.
Yeah, and if you don't want to watch the Cubs at all because they stink, then that's on you too.
If you don't want to, if you get done with this podcast and say, you know what, that sucked, I'm done. That's okay.
That's okay.
That's okay.
We're not here to convince you to do anything you don't want to do.
Right.
Like besides watch our show. That's what we want you to do.
Watch
our show.
I take it back. Don't stop watching the podcast.
No, you're making. We've all made good points here. I know that. Yeah, I go into every game like optimistic, hopeful that maybe they can turn us around. Like I know in the deep depths of my soul that's not gonna happen. But like we've seen crazier things happen in baseball.
Yeah.
And like that's the only thing that's like kind of keeping me, hopeful. And one reason that I am hopeful is if the Cubs were to do that, then that means guys are performing. That means guys are doing their job.
Yep.
When you're losing games, you're not really seeing the individual performances, at least more often than not, in my opinion, except for maybe in the bullpen.
And
Yeah.
there's something to be said for these young guys getting accustomed to winning together.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
learning to win, learning not to give away games, to do
That's
the right
what they did
things
the
at
last
end of the
time.
game.
That's what the last core did. They all came up relatively the same time. Rizzo a few years before the rest, but they all learned how to be winners in 2015, and obviously that carried over to 16. Didn't lead to another World Series after that, but that's still the most successful run in recent Cubs history, if not all of Cubs history. So yeah, that's a good point. It's like these young guys that are going to come up. Brennan Davis will be up at some point. Caleb Killian could be up as soon as these doubleheaders coming up, but he'll be up at some point this season. And these guys, teams go through these losing cycles where they're figuring things out and figuring out how to not, like you said, blow leads or get not the offense is good for 3-4 innings and then can't beat the bullpen after that. So like that, when you have Christopher Morel up here, Brandon Hughes is up and looked good. Even that Saturday he had given 1 run in about an inning, and it's like, he's a rookie. Like that's going to happen. He's not going to strike out the side every single time he comes out. But these guys are learning how, again, and then adjusting to when other teams make adjustments to them and learning how to, go through the ups and downs of a season, the ebbs and flows of a season, and ultimately learning how to win games together. But also, Cody, you mentioned that point of you've seen crazier things happen. The Braves last year were under 500 till beginning of August. First week of August were under 5. They didn't get above 500. They were always kind of hovering there, but they didn't get to above 500 till August 6th. 2 years ago, after 50 games, not 2 years ago, 3 years ago, after 50 games, the Nationals were 19 and 31, something like that. So, yeah, crazy turnarounds can happen, but at the same time, it's like those turnarounds happened over the entire 162, whereas if you are selling at the trade deadline, that turnaround can't happen. So
it's why the White Sox aren't out of it.
Yeah.
White Sox fans that were worried, it's like, well, you're near 500, you're still in the division, and you have a roster that you're not going to unload at the trade deadline, so they're going to be in it.
Yeah, I mean, even last year, you saw the collapse of the Cubs, that 11-game losing streak, but at the 40-game mark right now, they were 20 and 20, and then by early June, they were 11 games over 500. So again, that 11-game losing streak doesn't happen. They probably don't sell at the deadline. Maybe they don't buy a ton and go all in, but these guys maybe get their extensions or they get whatever, and they're not selling. But that's 2021, and you saw what happened in that 11-game. That was a turning point of the season. That 11-game losing streak. This is a new season. They don't have the all-star caliber core pieces that they had in Chris Bryant or Javi Baez or Rizzo anymore. But again, crazy things can happen, and then you kind of. It is still early, and I talked about how right now they're still looking like sellers just based on the play. But it's only 40 games into the season. That's about the quarter-way mark. But it's also again, crazy things happen. Baseball season is long. You still have 75%-ish of the games left to go. So, I mean, if you can give up hope if you want. You cannot give up hope and still be Cody, be optimistic. But that's if that's how you look at it and you really want the Cubs to win. Obviously, you keep hoping for that because crazy things happen over a long season. But if you want to look at just, hey, is Alfonso Rivas, breaking out of this slump and starting to hit again? You root for that. Christopher Morel, you want him to stay up here and hit more home runs. Maybe you root for that. But like you said, it's like we're not going to tell you how to root for your team, but also, there's very little margin for error, but there is still some, as little as that is. So, I mean, you got to see how the season goes and then go from there.
I'm also not saying don't be indifferent. If you feel indifferent about this team and you're just you watch every 6th game, if that's the way you are, that's okay too. I understand fans that feel that way that are just like, I'll wait for 2 years to see what they're like. And that's all right. The only reason I say, in my opinion, I don't root for them to lose a bunch of games in a row. I think they're going to sell anyways, and I'm watching the development. But This isn't like when the Bulls had a chance to get a top 5 pick and then went on a stretch of winning 10 games at one point a couple years ago, and they blew their chance at like a top 5 pick. Mm-hmm. That's not the way baseball works. Like very rarely does like finding that, even more so now with new rules, but like finding a slot between being the 7th pick and the 13th pick, like it's not like baseball. Like it's not that clear cut like basketball is for who some of these guys are. So there's no point in that, like in my opinion. But if that's what you want to root for and you're like, hey, let's get closer to the top 3 pick next year, okay. If that's how you want to do it, that's okay. I don't see a whole lot of fun in that, but I understand people that feel that way. I mean, this is a team that, because of the way it was built and the time frame that they're in right now, people are rooting a lot of different ways. It's not just like it's not just the diehards saying they got to win this game. It's not just the people rooting for individual performances. It's not just the people rooting for draft picks. Like there's a lot of ways to watch the Cubs right now, and that's okay because that's the position the franchise has put you in. It's also okay to bet on the team if you want, Cody.
Yeah, after all of this talk, I'm just throwing it out there that I'm betting the Cubs to win tonight. So, death, taxes, and I just need help. The best way to support CHGO is to download the PointsBet app and use code CHGO. When you sign up, if you make a $50 or more first-time deposit, you'll receive a free CHGO membership, which unlocks all of our web content. You even get a free shirt of your choice from the CHGO locker. If you have any questions, email pointsbet@allchgo.com and we'll help you. Remember that PointsBet is your home for live in-game betting. They even have a new exclusive feature, live NBA same-game parlay. For the first time ever, build the perfect live same-game parlay only with PointsBet. Combine your favorite bets anytime during the game. You can even boost your live same-game parlays. And now online sign-up is available in Illinois. You can actually download the PointsBet app right now and register your account from start to finish, all from your phone. Signing up with the fastest sportsbook is now easier than ever, so you can start living your bet life in seconds. Use code CHGO when you get 2 risk-free bets up to $2,000. So what are you waiting for? Once the game starts, don't just bet, live your bet life with PointsBet. Gambling problem, call 1-800-522-4700.
We only have 7 minutes left in this pregame podcast, but I want to give like 4 of those minutes to this real quick. Josh Donaldson gets a 1-game suspension for calling Tim Anderson Jackie. Major League Baseball, what are you doing? This makes it hard to root for Major League Baseball in general. They gave Keegan Thompson 3 games knocked down to 2 for hitting a guy in the butt with a pitch, okay? They gave none to the Astros for cheating in the World Series. And now you're going to give a guy 1 game for calling a player Jackie on the field? I don't care if Josh Donaldson ever plays again this season. Honestly, like you're trying to promote a game that's including everybody.
Inclusive,
diversity. Yeah. The African-American population in baseball keeps dwindling. And you're going to let some guy call one of the greatest players in baseball right now, I don't care if he called the worst player in baseball, Jackie, not totally uncalled for, absolutely uncalled for, and shouldn't be playing till, at minimum, the All-Star break. At minimum, 1 game?
Yeah, I saw someone, I forgot where I saw it, but it was like, okay, maybe Donaldson didn't intend or whatever to disrespect Tim Anderson, whatever, but it's like, when you're calling him Jackie, but you're using it to get under his skin, and you know 100%. That, and like that was Josh Donaldson's intent, was to get under his skin. Like he was trying to bother Tim Anderson, and you're using Jackie Robinson, who name in baseball should really only be uttered at like an honorable way. Like Jackie Robinson broke the color barrier. Like his number's retired by every team in baseball. It's retired by Major League Baseball. You can't use Jackie Robinson's name as a way to get under someone's skin. And then we've heard Josh Donaldson has had multiple incidents, not just with the White Sox, but throughout his career.
He's a clown
of just being disrespectful or being whatever. This is bad. This was really bad, and we saw it in the press box, and we're like, what the heck? Like even his explanation, we're like, that doesn't what?
He used it as a derogatory term.
Yeah, he was intentionally trying to get under, like, to bother Tim Anderson. And, Tim Anderson, to his credit, like, just after the game, he just kind of said what happened and didn't, wasn't blowing up anything, wasn't whatever, but he just really just gave the facts, like, hey, this is what happened. Like, I find it disrespectful, right? I find it racist. And that again, credit to Tim Anderson for kind of keeping his cool and really just giving the facts out there. But it was just I mean, when I saw it, I'm like, are you
Totally uncalled
gotta be
for.
kidding me, man? Like that was terrible. That was terrible.
Totally uncalled for.
Yeah, the Cubs won the Rich Harden trade.
Yep.
That's what
Right? Like,
that
I'm glad
entire
that guy never wore
situation.
a
That's what
jersey.
I've been thinking about. I mean, you guys are right about what you're saying, and I tend to lean towards that too. So I mean, I also haven't really followed the story that much, so I don't want to like really say anything. So, but like, yeah, I mean,
It was
there's trash talking, and then there's also like,
Yes.
you know, and it seems like if what Tim Anderson is saying, like, you know, there's no reason we shouldn't believe him. It's not like he's lying to people. So whatever, you know, what he said about Josh Donaldson, I mean, there's no reason to not believe him. So
well, Donaldson admitted it. He just claimed he didn't mean it that way.
right,
Which maybe he
Which is
didn't.
why he got
you know,
suspended.
maybe he didn't mean to be intentionally racist, but just the fact that he was doing it, and again, doing it to get
Right.
under his skin and using Jackie Robinson as a way to do that is like you can't, man. I don't care what your intention was. Like that's just not right. That's not right.
Right. Baseball should just consider what he said and treat it differently than the way they did, in my opinion. All right, who you got tonight? I'm going with Seiya Suzuki. And the reason is their pitcher's all over the place.
Yeah.
He's got the same amount of, like he's got one more strikeout than he does walks this year. So I think he's going to have a rough afternoon or rough evening, so I'll go with Seiya because he knows the strike zone.
I'm going with Hap. He's got a homer off Gutierrez, batting 500. I know it's only 4 at bats, but 2 for 4 with a homer, 2 RBIs, I think. So, and he plays well in Cincinnati, like every year.
That's a good point. Schwarber used to too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I got Drew Smyly. I'm feeling a good start. You know, he was kind of the Cubs' most dependable starter for a good minute there. His last outing wasn't too great, but I got a feeling about him today. So Drew Smyly is my pick, and I'm expecting at least a quality start from him today.
And I looked at his record. Like, that's when people talk about like stats don't always reflect the truth, and wins and losses have become less reflective of how good a pitcher is. He's 1-5. He deserves to have a record that's better than 1-5.
He really does.
Right? Like,
Yeah.
at the same time, a guy who's not a starter, Keegan Thompson's like 5-0 now, and that sort of does reflect how well he's pitched this season, even as a bullpen guy. So I would agree. I think Smyly does well tonight, and I think a lot of hitters should have success against Gutierrez because 19 strikeouts, 18 walks, and an ERA almost of 9.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Not
You
great,
better
Bob.
beat this guy again. Don't take him for granted because if you don't win this game, Cody's going into Lake Michigan. That's
he
it.
is.
And by the way, I saw that Sean
I
from
was
the
gonna
Sox
say that,
podcast jumped in and said Tim Anderson never said it was racist. He said he felt disrespected. Tony La Russa called it racist.
Thank you for clearing that up, Sean, our CHGO Sox
I'll call
guy.
it racist. That's the way I looked at it. Now,
um,
maybe he didn't mean it that way. It's still, you were using a man's race as a derogatory term. You weren't calling him Jackie Robinson for any other reason.
Yeah.
And we just celebrated Jackie Robinson's breaking into baseball,
75
right?
years ago, yeah.
75 years, made a big deal about it. And you're going to suspend a guy 1 game for using his name as a derogatory term.
Thank you to Sean for clearing that up. Don't want to put anything out there that's wrong. So Sean, thank you for clearing that up.
Nick, as again referring to, I think, the Reds fans, but you never know. He says over-under on fans with bags on their heads. And I assume he means Reds fans, not Cubs fans.
Should we set the line at 3.5?
I just tell you, they've only got 4 less wins than the Cubs do. So don't
see.
Don't poke fun. The Cubs only have 4 more wins.
Yeah.
The last time I made fun of a team, it was the Pirates, and they won 3 out of 4. It was not a good look.
Oh man.
All right. Oh, Sean, heart you too. Heart you too, my friend.
All right, so we'll see what happens. Let's hope the Cubs get a win out of this, and also we see player development from certain players, and we can all be happy afterwards.
Let's just hope they win and not like stressful matter. That's honestly what would be nice. I just don't want to be stressed for 9 innings.
So you want like a 7-0 win?
I'd take like a 4-0 win.
Okay.
Like
I'd
take
they
that.
score 4 in like the 4th inning, and then it's like, okay, that's what you want.
Like
Okay.
do exactly what they did Saturday, except not blow it.
All right.
Yeah.
By the way, my who you got? I was going to pick Kevin Kaduk in our softball game, in the media softball game tonight, because I heard big things. I saw him running down first base in the last.
He replied to the Cubs, the CHGO Cubs account last week when I tweeted about how Dan Vogelbach running home from third base was like our 16-inch softball team playing.
Oh no!
And he
So
replied, with a
athletic.
video of him just mashing a softball and running to first. It was
We're 1-0.
It was majestic.
More athletic.
We're 1-0.
I'll be there
Kevin,
soon.
who do we play tonight? Scandal.
A mix.
Field Notes and Game. I thought he was going to say that terrible show that used to be on ABC. It was a real bad
Well,
show. My wife made me watch it.
I'll be
That's a
coming
whole
off the
nother
IL
story.
soon, Kev. So you expect me in a couple
when
weeks.
when we get an off day on Monday, I'm out there.
Oh yeah,
You'll see me
100%.
there.
Shortstop.
All right. Thanks for
left
dropping
field.
in to check out the CHGO Cubs pregame show. We're back after the final out. Hope you'll come around afterwards, hang out for a good times on the postgame show. We'll see you then and fly the W.